I want to cover myself. There we go. Okay, so we are now recording. So watch what you say.
Okay, yes, we'll give about another minute or so because I see more people popping on.
Yes, and we, Pastor Ward, we do indeed have a poll loaded when you're ready. Also, I'm going to make you a co-host just in case that's required. Okay.
Oh, so that's why I couldn't see that it was there, because I wasn't a co-host.
You weren't a co-host, yes.
Oh,
now you have the power, yes.
I see a couple more people popping on.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on here?
I'm just going to fix that. Hang on just a second. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you.
Whose dog is barking?
And it's not even my dog.
I'm just going to remind everybody, if you just put on your mute. And then to remember when you want to speak, to take your mute off.
The reason I asked is it will make my dog bark.
All right, I think we're going to get started. Welcome everyone to this year-end generosity event hosted by Southern Ohio Synod, but joined today with us are our siblings in Christ from the Southeastern Michigan Synod. And so welcome folks from the North, and welcome to Bishop Chris. And this is how we show collaboration and partnership, not only between synods, but also in the region. So we are really happy to have you. Also exceedingly happy to have Pastor Mike Ward as our presenter today. Many of you know Pastor Ward. He is from GSB, and for Southern Ohio, and I also know for Southeast Michigan, you know him as our consultants in our ministry campaigns. Southeast Michigan, I think you've almost completed yours. And here in Southern Ohio, Thrive is our mission campaign. And so we're about halfway through it or so, even in the midst of COVID. And so part of the reason that we're having this is because of our stewardship team in Southern Ohio, who thought this would be an important event to hold. And it's also sponsored by Thrive. And I do see Pastor Larry Donner, who is our campaign manager, also on here. And for Southern Ohio Synod folks, if you have questions about Thrive or want to get your campaign started, please contact Pastor Donner. But we are really very happy to have all of you here today. So without any further ado, Pastor Ward, it's up to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Bishop. I'm delighted to be with you. Good to see some friends on the call. And I look forward to our time together. I'll be sharing my screen here in a few minutes. In the meantime, you can watch my dog take a nap. She will not bark. She will probably sleep the whole time we're here together. I'm delighted to be with you. I'm delighted to talk about year-end giving. I think we're probably all ready for this year to end. It seems like it started about a decade or so ago, but we're excited to see it end. But before it does, there's some opportunity in front of us. And so I appreciate you all being interested to join together today to see how it is we can capitalize on that opportunity. And to kind of start us off, I'm going to ask a question that should appear on your screen momentarily. If you'll answer my poll question, that'll kick us off. I will tell you that more of you are getting it right than I expected, but, or maybe it was right up for the workshop, I don't know, but y'all are doing great. I'm gonna leave it open for another 3 seconds maybe, because most of you have now voted. All right, I'll end the poll. I'll share the results. Y'all had a dead tie between 50% and 35%. And half of you are right. So the answer, 35% of giving in America happens between Thanksgiving Day and the end of the year. So this year, I have a hunch it could be higher. I think there's a whole lot of generosity out there waiting to happen. I'm involved in a campaign in Iowa right now that I think will end up being the most successful capital campaign in a congregation that I have ever participated in. It's just ridiculously phenomenal, the response that is coming from this community. They are so eager to envision a brighter future, and they're giving to it. And I'm seeing that across the country as we're doing annual stewardship work. And that annual stewardship work is in both of your synods. And so I'm not talking about someplace that's not you. I'm talking, I talked to the Southern Ohio group yesterday, and I talked to the Southeastern Michigan group this morning. So my engagement with those two locales is very current, and just generosity is happening significantly in both places. So we have this opportunity that 35% of giving in America is going to happen in the next 6 weeks, Thanksgiving Day to the end of the year. There's an easy way, well, before I say that, some years we tell people, hey, we ended up having a good December. And some years we say, well, December wasn't so great. Well, 35% of giving in America is going to happen between Thanksgiving and the end of the year, whether you receive any of it or not. And what I want to do is help make sure that you get your share, or at least position yourselves to get your share. There is an easy way to kind of screw it up. And I just mention it that way because I want to get your attention. And it's the way in which we message it most frequently. And that is to say, help us balance the budget, right? That is the primary messaging that I hear in most of our congregations. And it often comes out of the finance committee. And I bet in the average congregation, there are 2 people on the finance committee that get kind of excited to hear about a balanced budget. But that's about it for the congregation. Right? No offense to any of them. You're all great people. And my dad would be one of those if he was on your finance committee, all right? But that's not the general congregation. The general congregation isn't really that worried about you balancing their budget. They're somewhat hopeful you will. It doesn't keep them up at night. And it also doesn't motivate them, oh, the church wants to balance their budget. I should give an extra $600 here at the end of the year. It's not that motivating force to get them there. We talk in terms that the steps to a gift are to inform, to motivate, to ask, and to thank. Telling people you want to balance the budget, all that does is inform people, okay? It doesn't motivate, and you didn't really ask, okay? And so we need to make sure we motivate. But there's a different way to kind of, I hope you all balance your budgets this year. The better way to frame the case, and all of this, every time we want to ask for money, we need to start with a case. The better way to frame the case is very simple. And it is to say that when revenue exceeds expenses here at the end of the year, this is what we're going to do next. And by pointing to this is what we're going to do next, you're also leading people to recognize that the kingdom of God doesn't necessarily happen just because you've balanced your budget, that there is more to be done. And you're pointing people to a message and a mentality of abundance, that there can be more beyond just balancing a budget. And the case is to kind of figure out, what would you do if you had extra money? It's a question I ask every client I have. If you had an extra $10,000 this year, what would you do with it? And if you don't have an answer to that question, your donors are going to probably work pretty hard to make sure you don't have it. Because if you don't have a plan for it, it's not going to do any good. Other charities are going to tell people what they would do with it. All right, so what we need to do is figure out, what will we do if revenue exceeds expenses? Now, another quick word this year about that. So in normal times, I tell churches and other nonprofits, embrace your nonprofit status. Make sure you end the year investing everything into your mission, all right? Now, most years, the Finance Committee will push back on that. And this year, the Finance Committee is probably going to push back on that even harder because we're still living in a pandemic. The vaccine, although the news is good, it's not here yet. And we're still in uncertain times, right? I can assure you that if the messaging is, as revenue exceeds expenses this year, we're going to put everything into savings because next year is going to be tough, will also result in not very good response this year, okay? It might be what some financially minded folks want to do, but it's not what your donors want to do. Because if you give the message that, hey, next year is going to be tough and we need to set money aside just in case it's not real good at all, you know what your donors are going to say? Hey, they're right. So I should set money aside in my savings account because it might be tough next year and I'll wait and see how it goes. And that's not the message we want to give people. But because it is uncertain times, what I'm encouraging folks to do is say, hey, the first half of next year is still going to be a little bit unusual. So with 50% of the revenue that exceeds expenses, we're going to defer a decision on exactly what to do with that money until the end of the second quarter next year, all right? The decision might be, hey, we're going to put that into our budget to help it balance. And by the way, this includes any PPP money that you might have gotten this year, all right? It goes into the 50% of what's left. Revenue exceeding expenses this year, you can defer that decision till the end of the second quarter so that you've got a little bit of stimulus money to help get you through. But the other 50% of money, do something with it. Advance your mission. You know, the best year that my congregation ever had at the end of the year was the year that said, with everything that's left over, a third's going to go to the outreach committee, and here's what they're going to do with it. A third of it's going to go to the education committee because they have some bold new initiatives that we need to fund now. And a third of it's going to go to a committee that's going to have a big party when we can finally gather together again because we're ready for a party. And instead of doing potluck, we're going to buy whatever it is, beverage of choice that you want to buy and have some nice catered food because we need to get together again and celebrate. That's what I'd like to see you do with it. Don't just give it all away to people that aren't advancing your mission. Now, your synods help you advance your mission, your camps help you advance your mission, the seminaries help you advance your mission. If you want to invest in some of your ministry partners with some of that money, by all means, you should do that because they help you be better at your mission than you are alone. But you're not a community foundation. Don't just pick 6 charities in your local community and give the money away and they'll never acknowledge your existence or tell anybody about Jesus because of your gift. That's not advancing your mission, all right? The synod, the camps, the other Lutheran agencies, the food pantry that you partner with, invest in them with some of it, but then enhance your ministry, you know? Boost your marketing budget so more people can hear the good news. Or, you know, I'm not here to tell you what your mission is, but better live into your mission with some of this extra money. And the worst thing you'll do is tell people that you have plans for money if they happen to, you know, help you get extra at the end of the year. Because ultimately on December 31st, for the budget's sake, all that matters is, did revenue exceed expenses? And if it did, what are you going to do with that? All right. So I think I've rambled for about 11 minutes on case development, and that's about enough. But it's where it all starts. Okay. If the case for what you're going to do with gifts doesn't help, then people are going to give to somebody else, because I can assure you that the environmental organizations that you're on their mailing list, they've already started mailing, by the way. The food pantries have already started mailing. You know, I've gotten 2 letters from the ELCA in the last 2 weeks. They've started mailing. You know, places, everybody else is going to ask, and they're going to tell me what they're going to do with it. And if the only thing you're going to do with it is put it in reserves, I'm going to give it to somebody else. All right. So we need to develop the case. Now, if you tell me, well, it must be too late because our council already met, send them an email with what you want to do with it and have them vote by email and just do it. right? We don't need to let the speed of church cause us to not be able to put out a message to our folks that says we have some great plans. You know, we want to make sure that this church is stronger and better than it's been, and we see a vibrant future, and we're going to invest in that. And we believe in abundance. We believe that God has given us enough, and it's enough to share, and that people out there are going to want to, do something with that. All right. So that's the case. The case has to be put in place. All right. By the way, I don't think I said, if you have questions throughout, there's the special little hand raise feature, which I love. Or you can put a question in the chat box, and Katie will flag me down if I miss it and make me pause and stop. All right. But again, I just did a good bit of time on case development because it all starts with that. And if you aren't giving a good, solid message to your people, they're going to respond to somebody else. Okay. Because again, 35% of giving in America is going to happen between Thanksgiving and the end of the year. All right. Good. You tolerated that well, it looked like. I'm not watching the count, but I don't think anybody left us. So, but I am going to move on, and I'm going to start sharing my screen here. It's just that I really like looking at people, and so I don't like to start screen sharing until I have to. And by the way, I think we'll have the ability to send you these slides afterwards, even though it's really a lot of fun for me to watch you all, write feverishly. We will share this with you. So the first is about the case. Everything that I shared is there, but in a much simpler format. But then we have to talk about how it is we're going to ask, and who we're going to ask, and how we're going to ask them and invite them and encourage them to make these gifts. And this year, I would really like you to think in terms of two different segments, okay? And the first segment is the most critical, in my opinion. And in the fundraising world, we call this group Libunts, all right? And I'm sharing that term from the fundraising world because it's kind of fun to say. And I think in the world in which we've lived for the last few months, it's good to have something fun just to say. So Libunts, that's an acronym that stands for last year, but unfortunately not this, okay? So Libunt is somebody who gave in 2019, but they've not yet given in 2020. Sibunts is some years, but unfortunately not this year. We're not going to focus on them as much because it's a staler list. It's a harder group to get. I'm most focused on the Libunts. There's a pastor in one of your synods who called me 2 weeks ago and said, I have an $85,000 problem, that we're behind revenue, $85,000. And I said, run your list of Libunts. And you know what we found? We found $85,000 worth of giving that had been given by people in 2019 who had not yet made a gift in 2020. So this pastor was about to give messaging to the congregation, hey, we need you to step up, quickly changed that messaging to, hey, those of you that are listening to this are being really generous. We need to talk to and re-engage about 25% of our membership who haven't yet made a gift this year. This pastor immediately began phoning these people, an activity that probably should have started in September or October, but we take the time given us and we do what we can with it, all right? Now, if anything is keeping me up at night right now, it is the number of Libunts that we have in our congregations. I am seeing between 25 and 33% of people who gave in 2019 have not yet given in 2020. And I don't worry about this nearly as much from a financial perspective as much as I do from a spiritual perspective. You know, where are they in their faith journey that they've not engaged in generosity yet this year? My hunch is they're not engaging virtual worship, they're not engaging care groups, they're not engaging faith formation. Their spiritual journey is probably stagnated. And I worry about what does this look like at the end of this pandemic for their spiritual lives. I don't think they automatically just come back. I think we need to work at it. And I think it's also low-hanging fruit because these are people who have given to us before, they have been engaged before, and we know who they are and how to contact them and how to love them, care for them, and re-engage them. So my first group of who to ask is this Libunt group. So how are we going to do that? I'm going to start with a letter, but just know a letter is not going to be the only thing I do. In direct mail circles, if you get a 10% response rate from a piece of mail, you're seen as leading the industry. Like, that is really good. So a letter alone isn't going to do it, but it's a great place to start. And in the letter, I'm going to ask people if they will renew the gift that they made last year. So it will say, and I'm going to show you a sample letter here in a little bit, which we will also share with you, because you took the time to come and hang out with me today. So it's going to say, thank you for your gift of $400 to First Lutheran Church last year. Can you please renew that gift this year? That's basically what the ask is going to sound like, all right? If you have the capacity to find somebody in your congregation that will match dollar for dollar any libunt that makes a gift, that will help stimulate response here as well. And by the way, many of you have those people because they want to see other people join them in generosity, okay? So sometimes that can be some of the easiest money you ask for. I would phone and follow up with them. The only person that I would recommend not do this is the person I just talked to who's in Metro Atlanta, who is suffering through 2 Senate races yet, and people are being too inundated with robocalls even still. So, but I would do a phone follow-up with these folks. And then I'd post on social media, give people a reply device that says, yes, yes, Pastor Susan, I'd love to make a gift. Of course, I'll renew my gift this year. And then put personal notes on these letters as you push them out. So segment 1, we're asking for a renewal. We're telling them what we're going to do with money as revenue exceeds expenses, because they don't care about your balanced budget, but they will care about some special initiatives. And we're going to treat them like people. We're going to phone them. We're going to check in with them. We're going to continually remind them as they may interact with us. And anyway, that's kind of the primary approach there. Segment 2 then, and by the way, you could have a lot more segments than I'm giving you. I'm giving you the 2 simple ones, all right? Then your second segment can be current donors. With this group, we're going to ask them for an additional gift. But again, we're going to stay positive and assume abundance, and we're going to ask them that, hey, we'd love for you to make an extra gift, and we believe that revenue will exceed expenses this year, and when that happens, this is what we're going to do. But I have a hard rule that I am not interested in you asking this group of people for an additional gift until a leader steps up and says that they will make an extra gift. And I really prefer that this is not the pastoral leader, okay? We have too many pastors that are in the top 10 on the donor lists for their congregations. And I would really like to see this be lay-led, and for a lay person to stand up and say, hey, I love this congregation and I'm having a better year than I expected to. And so I'm going to double my monthly giving here in the month of December, because I'd really love to see us have revenue that exceeds expenses, because I want to see us have a big party next year. And I want to see us invest in our ministry partners, and I want to see us, live into that reality. All right. So again, with this group, there's a generosity witness first. We're not just begging our best donors for an extra gift. It's a join me kind of an ask. We embed outcome stories of the good ministry that our church is already about. And then it's an ask for an extra gift, but it's not specific. All right. We're not in a capital campaign asking somebody for $1,000 here at the end of the year. We're asking them just to consider an extra gift. At the same time, we want to give people an idea what we're looking at. If we want to make a $40,000 gift as a congregation to the Thrive campaign in Southern Ohio, for instance, we would tell people that that's what our goal is. And so people would start to say, hey, they're looking at hoping to get an extra $40,000. What would my part of that be? All right. Or if you're looking to feed 120 people Christmas dinner and that's going to cost $80 a family, let people know that. So we're going to give people an idea of what kind of money we're looking at, but we're not going to necessarily ask them in this group for a specific amount. And then we're going to reinforce it through social media, through the announcements on Sunday, through our newsletter, through sharing generosity stories when other people step up with this gift. The church is the only nonprofit in America that has the close relationship with donors that we have. They pay attention to us every week, okay? We get a chance to reinforce our message of generosity and an opportunity for giving every single week with people. And we need to live into that and be intentional about it. So again, segment 1 is the lie bunts. Ask them for what they gave last year, personalize it, give them a means to reply, and don't assume that they're going to want to go to your website. Invite them to your website, but also give them a chance to send a check back, all right? I've actually had churches doing very well where they included, I don't usually recommend this, but they've included self-addressed stamped envelopes, and they've been getting stellar responses with that this year. And then your current donors, it's an extra gift, and you give guidance on how big of a gift you're looking for, cumulatively at least, from the end of the year. Again, and it's when revenue exceeds expenses, this is what we will do, okay? Some important factors just to keep in mind. 35% of giving in America is going to happen between Thanksgiving Day and the end of the year, and you need to position yourself to be getting some of that, and it's not your balanced budget. My favorite time to send a letter is next Monday. So you've got like 5 days to hit my favorite day, right? Worst case, you get it out a week after that. But the Monday of Thanksgiving week is my favorite day to send year-end letters. Now, there is something in the CARES Act that every donor who doesn't itemize can deduct $300 from their taxes this year if they give that money away. In the average congregation, 30 to 40% of donors are giving less than $300 a year. So they can take advantage of that. But that is not the lead message, okay? Lutherans have never been tax-motivated donors, so don't lead with a tax implication. Lead with your case for gifts. Lead with what you're gonna do with the money when you get it. But tell people that, hey, you may not know, but there's an extra tax incentive available for you. And then the final thing to share here is stock values are up. In March, most people didn't expect stock values to be up, okay? Certainly in April, they did not. You need to have a means to receive stock gifts, okay? For 2 reasons. One, people that have an appreciated asset in a stock or a mutual fund can give away the capital gains, and it's really good for them to do that through gifting a stock. The other thing is, if you're age 70 and a half or older, you're normally required to take a distribution out of your IRA. The CARES Act did change that age to 72 and a half, but you can still do it at 70 and a half. It also said it's not required in 2020, but you can still do it in 2020. But you have to give the gift directly from your IRA to the church. And so you need to have a brokerage account set up to receive those gifts. Now, just because they're not required doesn't mean they're not happening. One of my clients typically expects $80,000 a year in IRA giving, and they got $115,000 this year when it wasn't required, okay? So you may say, well, we've never gotten a stock gift. And I will tell you, if you don't have a brokerage account, there could be your reason. And you could say, well, none of our people have stock. And I would tell you, well, you might want to pay a little bit different attention because that's probably not true, all right? And so I would have them. I'm not promoting anybody. My clients tend to like Ameritrade because they're very low fees. I will tell you, Charles Schwab does not want your business for this. They're going to charge you ridiculous fees. You're all ELCA folks, so the ELCA Foundation is an option for you to serve as your brokerage account. I love the ELCA Foundation, but not so much when it comes to these gifts because the lag time between giving it and you getting your money is really slow. So, but it works. Like it works. It works, but it's really slow. And I don't like really slow when it comes to getting gifts. So anyway, I'll do a couple of quick questions, then I'm going to show you the letter and we'll send you the letter here at the end. But so from a timing standpoint, you're wrapping up your fall appeal this Sunday. Here's the thing with that. I understand. And this year, things probably got a little later than we usually do them. I would still plan between Thanksgiving and the end of the year to send the Libunk letter. You may want to wait a week or two. Chances are your Libunts aren't paying a whole lot of attention to your stewardship appeal anyway, all right? but they will pay attention to an end of the year ask, all right? In fact, with live bunts, it's probably more important to do the end of the year ask than it is to send them your stewardship material, all right? I want to get them as a donor again before I worry about them pledging, all right? If you're finishing your stewardship appeal this year, I would do everything I talked about with your current donors, with the exception of sending them the letter, all right? But still, starting next week or this week, tell them what you're going to do when revenue exceeds expenses through your announcements, through your bulletin inserts, through your e-newsletter, and continue that messaging through the end of the year. And so, but I'd probably, if you're just finishing your stewardship drive, I would probably not send a letter to that group, but I would do all the other messaging. So I hope that helps. If that's not enough, interrupt me. So what do you say when it would be unlikely that your church can in fact balance your budget? I would still tell people what I would do if you accidentally happen to have that experience, all right? I would let people know that there is that, you know, there's still hope, right? And so you might want to be, if it is a stretch, you might want to tell people, hey, we've been operating behind and you know, we're still struggling to make it, but you know what, if we do in fact experience revenue exceeding expenses, we've got some ideas of what we might do. Just today, I saw a donor who gave $40 to their church last year, who pledged $10,400 to their church next year. There are people who have not been giving to you that have significant capacity that you've got to put mission in front of them in order for them to step up. But they could be bored with what they're hearing from your normal communications. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but oftentimes our normal communications is boring to some of our donors. Let them know what you would do if you got to the point where you started getting beyond just the budget. And I tell you what, right now in the world we're living in, people will get a smile on their face and be happy to think about a life where it can be better than it currently is. And that's what you're doing when you describe that vision of the future. And people will give to that. People will give to that significantly. And I think just starting to let people know that you do in fact have a vision beyond the current. The worst thing that happens is you've told people you have a vision beyond the current status. That life doesn't have to only be cutting. There is an opportunity for generosity. And if you need some help with that, the Feeding of the 5,000 story is a great place to preach a couple of Sundays and follow that up. You know, it's the story where everybody was fed and they were satisfied. A concept that people in the United States really need to learn is what satisfied could mean. And then follow that up with Matthew 6:34, to not worry about tomorrow, that tomorrow has worries of its own. That is the spiritual thing that is holding most donors back. We worry so much about tomorrow and it's totally unfounded. You know, for most of us to worry as much as we do and heal people of that burden of feeling like they are God and not God is God, and that they have to do it all themselves, but to have some faith, have some trust, and to give up a little bit. I mean, the median most Protestants give less than 1% of their income. There is capacity in the system for more generosity. Our messaging needs to lead people there. So let me show you quick the letter, and Katie, I think I'll send this to you, and I think we have the capacity to send this out then. And you all are not going to be able to see that font size. Hang on. Let's go to that. You'd think this was the first time I'd been on Zoom, with as long as this has taken me. I'm sorry. So I've written you a template for a letter. All right. Now you better adjust this, because there's blanks in it that will make you look really foolish if you don't, you know, fill in with your own story. You know, it tells people what you will do. It gives a little bit of a shout out to the CARES Act $300 deduction piece, but that's not the lead. And so you tell people what you're going to do, you invite people to that, and then you invite them to consider an extra gift at the end of the year. It's a pretty simple letter, but I'll go ahead and send that to you. And it'll come with a newsletter article that does better explain the CARES Act piece. Just know that that's not designed to be your only newsletter article, because remember, we're not leading with deducting $300 from our taxes next year. We're leading with our ministry, but I decided I would write the technical aspects of that law for you so that you don't have to try to interpret and do that. In fact, I stole it from a guy in my firm that knows how to write that way. I didn't do it myself. And so that'll come to you as well, because you took the time to sign up for this, and we just want to give you a little something for the effort. So what questions do we have? What else can be helpful? Feel free to use the chat. Feel free to, I guess, we're a small enough group. I think we can unmute and talk if we need to. So this is the shy group. Anything else about timing? Because I know a lot of you are still finishing up your appeals. Well, somebody had a question. Hey, thanks, Don.
Yep.
Oh, is that a hand up, or are you applauding for me?
It was sorry, that was meant to be a hand up.
Oh, I was taking the applause, Don.
Well, okay, don't be so needy, Mike. But the question that I had was, in terms of getting these letters out, is this better still to do snail mail or electronic? Or is there any significant difference in terms of methodology there?
Yeah, now, great question, Don. Now that we are beyond the election, direct mail is the way to go. The pandemic has shown the Lilly School of Philanthropy near you over there in Indiana has studied this even during the pandemic, and response rates to direct mail are higher than they were pre-pandemic. And church people tend to be a little bit more traditional and like their mail instead of their electronic. At the same time, I would do electronic, and I would give people direction as to how to make their gift electronic, because I fall into this category. I love to get the direct mail piece, but I'm not going to write you a check. I'm going to go to your website and make a gift. And there are more and more people like that. And so the direct mail piece, it'll have a longer lifespan. You can email it as well. I mean, it's not bad to send people multiple touches of the same thing, but yes, the postage is very well worth it. And so so I would direct mail it, but give people the electronic options and the stock option as to how they might actually fulfill the commitment. So there was a time there between late October and November 3rd when it was a terrible time to mail things, but we're past that now, except unless you're in Georgia. So yeah, good question. Christine, it looked like you had a question or comment.
Yes, I do. We have had, I don't know, the last 6 years an Oktoberfest, which helped pay for our youth minister. And of course, this year that didn't happen. So that's one of our big concerns. How do we make up this difference? Any suggestions on that?
So there is money you need to spend on youth ministry then?
Yes. So we're going to be about $10,000 short on paying for youth ministry this year.
Are you in danger of having revenue exceed expenses in your budget?
No.
Are you close?
No.
All right. How far away are you?
I'd have to look it up, but it's quite a bit off. I mean, we've been saving. We did get the loan from the government, and that helped pay for salaries for, specifically right at the time.
So if you actually put the PPP money into your revenue sources for the year, would you come close to balancing?
Closer.
And I'm talking revenue to expenses, not your original budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Revenue is just way down.
Sure. I would give people the reason to give, and the reason, and I would probably put the $10,000 for youth ministry in front of people as to what you're going to set money aside for here at the end of the year. And if you are that far behind, have you looked to see why you're behind? Like, has every donor, and I call them donors, you can call them members, it doesn't matter to me. Has every donor in your congregation cut their giving by 50%? Or have you lost, did your largest donor who used to give $25,000 a year pass away? Or do you know why you're down?
Yeah, I'm not intimate with those details, but what the treasurer has said is that she said significant numbers, whatever that means, that have not given this year since we've been closed down. And I think it's one of those mindsets that people say, well, you're closed, why do you need the money? I'm not going there, I'm not going to give. I've heard that in other situations. People go on vacations, they tend not to give, for example.
So part of that's a longer conversation, but for this part, so it sounds like you have a very significant live on list. I would enlist some help to get messaging to them. It says, you know, it's been a tough year of ministry, but it's been a year in which we've all recognized our need for community, our need to gather together, our need to continue to worship, our need to continue to hear some good news in the midst of the world we live in. I think, honest, and I believe all of what I just shared with you. And we've missed being together, but the church is continuing its mission. We invite you to continue that mission with us. Last year you gave $400. We hope you'll give that this year. We're hoping by the end of the year our revenue exceeds expenses and we can put the $10,000 aside that we need to keep our youth ministry strong into the future that we weren't able to fund through our normal Oktoberfest avenue. And that's your case. And I think your target audience, from what your treasurer has told me, now, I mean, I love data. Well, I love when other people give me data. I don't love to keep up with data necessarily, but it sounds to me like your loss is in your live-ons. Get to them, you know, get the council to do a phone-a-thon to them and just say, hey, we miss you. Ministry's strong. It's a time we need to hear good news. I hope you'll tune in on Christmas Eve and hear that story of good news. Because holy cow, as I interact with people these days, they need some good news. And that's what we're supposed to be about. That's what we proclaim. And we need to be doing that. And so I think your problem, just like this other church I talked to in your area, I think you have a live-on problem. And so we know where to find it. Let's go after that and see what we can't fix here this year. But I would make your extra project, if revenue exceeds expenses, we're going to put that money into youth ministry. And you may get one of your generous people who is still with you to say, you know what, I'll match $5,000 dollar for dollar for the first 5,000 that comes in. That is not a weird gift for people to make, because the people who are being generous, they want other people to be generous with them. Like there's nothing that excites a generous donor than other people being generous around them. Like there's nobody in your church wants to be the only generous person. I promise you. If they are, they need some serious psychotherapy. And so we need to invite those people that want to be generous to stimulate that other generosity. And I think if you don't know what a matching gift is, tune into NPR and they will explain it to you.
Oh, yes.
I think their fall stewardship drive is always going on, and they've always got a matching gift. So is that helpful?
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. See, Tim, you asked a question, do I ever connect things to Giving Tuesday or Amazon or Facebook fundraising? I hate all three. If you asked my opinion, and that's what I was invited to give my opinion, I think. So Giving Tuesday at its best is a donor acquisition tool, okay? And so in the church, we're not usually worried so much about donor acquisition. We usually have the donors we need in our database. We just need to better connect with them. I don't mind if you tack on to Giving Tuesday your messaging that as revenue exceeds expenses this year, this is what we're going to do. And if you'd like to make a Giving Tuesday gift, you can. And that's kind of the launching of your end of year appeal that's going to continue. Amazon Smiles or whatever it is, that's not really philanthropy. That's inviting people to buy stuff that I don't mind you being part of that. It's not, there's much more money to be raised from people moving from where they are. If we could simply get half of your donors to start giving $1 a day, your ministries would be transformed. And that's, I think that's better work from a spiritual place to get their hearts better connected to your ministries than it is to get them to give a percentage of the stuff they don't need that they buy on Amazon. Facebook fundraising, don't do it. Just flat out run, get away, please don't. And I know I'm being recorded, and Zuckerberg can call me and ask me about it if he wants. Don't get into that. You'll never see the money. Like, you'll be in, if you're a pastor, you'll be in your next call before the check comes. I mean, no matter how long you stay. It just don't, that is not the answer, okay? Again, Giving Tuesday, it is better donor acquisition, but if you want to use it as a launch point for your end of year giving effort, fine. Amazon maybe, but man, we got a lot, there's a lot more capacity in our people that we've got better opportunity to do. So again, Katie, you told me I could give my opinion, so there you have it. Eric, I see you got your hand up, and then Jocelyn.
Yeah. Hey, Mike. In our annual meeting last week, we talked about giving and finances and where things were at, and at the time we didn't have, our treasurer didn't really have calculated where our giving is at, like, you know, year over year. And so that was a piece of information that was requested by a couple members of the congregation. And so in his anxiety to answer that question, he's been putting that number together. We finally have it. We're down about 20% when you factor out the PPP money. With the PPP money right now, we have a surplus. We'll see what happens with that. But in terms of communicating the fact that we're down 20%, and I think I know how you'll answer this, but the best way to communicate that, I don't think, is, hey, we're down 20%, y'all need to give more. How would you communicate that, the response to that specifically asked question, in a way that is more effective at driving giving?
So are your expenses going to be 100% of what you budgeted?
No, we're right now. Right now we're sitting at about a $16,000 surplus.
I would say as revenue exceeds expenses at the end of the year, this is what we're going to do. I don't think your budget doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. So the question was specifically about giving year over year is down. It wasn't about expenses. And so that was an anxiety point for some people in the meeting. They wanted to know how much it was down. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering, like, best way to answer that question in a way that's, you know, I don't want to say giving was down 20%. I'd rather say, and then you fill in the blank with what I should say.
Yeah. So I want to know where it's down. Like I got a call from an Episcopal church today, and she said, we're down 90,000. And I said, yeah, 60,000 of that was a single donor. And she's like, oh yeah. So now they're on a $900,000 budget. Now they're really only down 30,000 from the people who are still alive. And so that's not very much anymore. So it's a different story. So, you know, I want to know, where is that 20% down? Is it people that died or moved? Is it all in the lie bunts? Because if it's only from the people who aren't there, then I'm not going to lead with we're down 20%. I'm going to focus on renewing those lie bunts. But then with my people that are there, I'm going to start focusing on, as revenue exceeds expenses, here's what we're going to do with your generosity. It's kind of one of those years where I expect us to be down, but I also think expenses are down. And so I'm not going to focus as much on what January 1st, 2020 anticipated. it's time to look at what did the world give us and how are we doing in the midst of what the world gave us? And how can we best live out our mission in that? And let's start some work on renewing people that haven't given. And then we can put a lot more energy into that too, as, you know, what's the welcome back going to look like? I think we need to be spending a lot of time thinking about what does re-entry look like? You know, are we gonna play that up? Or are we gonna do something big with that so that we do re-engage people that seem to only engage when we're in person? I think that would be a far more fruitful discussion than worrying about what we anticipated back in January, when the world sent us a little bit different something. You know, I've heard of ministries not being willing to touch their rainy day fund. Like, man, it's raining. You know, it's a great year to use some reserves and stuff. So I would look a little deeper to see where the money is missing. And is it something you can control? Is it something you can work at? You know, where I get nervous is if every donor cut their giving 50%, I'm nervous. If it's all in lie bunts, I feel like that's something I can really work with. But if every donor cut 50%, I need to find out, did they cut because we got the PPP loan and it looked like we didn't need money? Or did they cut because they're all hurting and we're not going to be able to reset to a new level again next year? That is rarely the case, but if it is the case, I need to know that because that has the longer term implications. Is that helpful at all?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Jocelyn, you were next.
Yes, so what if giving has been good this year, exceeding expectations, because we assumed from the beginning that it would be down, but it's not down. And so we were just getting ready to send our letter of thanks and pledge for next year. So how should we kind of time this out? Because giving has been good. Should we ask for those end of the year gifts, or should we just say thank you and move on to next year?
So there's a mantra in fundraising that says giving begets giving. And I'm going to encourage you, jump on the wave and ride it. All right. So everything we've talked about, what are you going to do with extra money this year? I'm sure you got some ministry to do, right?
Right.
So I think you tell people, and believe it or not, I know this is hard to believe, but people do respond to positive messages in the church. Like, we usually think that we have to tell people that the sky is falling before they'll actually do something. Well, they'll respond better to positive news. Folks, it's been a tough year, but it's shown us that the ministry is important, and you've stepped up. And it looks like revenue is going to exceed expenses. And when it does, this is what we're going to do. And then as we move into next year, we encourage your continued generosity because we've got great plans. Join us for that. Here's your intent card to do that. I think you just roll that wonderfully positive message and you act a little countercultural and show abundance in the midst of a world that's looking at scarcity.
And so I could do that all in one letter?
At this stage of the calendar, yes.
Okay.
Next year, your stewardship drive should be a little earlier.
Right.
But I'll give you some grace this year because there's been some other things getting in the way. All right.
Right. Right. Okay.
Very good. No, that's great to hear. I appreciate hearing the positive story. Any other questions? I think we scheduled till 4. We can give people a couple minutes of their life back, I guess.
Mike, if we gave you an extra 30 minutes for the call, what would you do with it?
I'd probably start talking about planned giving, knowing me.
Sorry, being a wise guy.
So, hey, just to plant a seed, 10 years from now, people are going to look back on this period of time in history and say, that was the best moment to be doing planned giving work. So call me in 10 years and tell me I was right. So that's what's next. a bishop or Katie, it's yours.
Bishop Chris, anything?
Just to say thanks again for the hospitality. Virtual hospitality is still warm and welcoming, and thanks for the opportunity to jump in with y'all, particularly given the time sensitivity that we heard from Pastor Mike, and good to see friends that we don't usually get to see on the screen, and thank you for the chance to do this together. We're so much better at this church thing when we do it together than when we end up paddling our own canoes.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for joining us. Pastor Kerrigan, do you have anything else?
No, just a reminder to to Southern Ohio Synod congregations that if you paused your Thrive campaign, as we encourage you to do earlier in the year, now is also a good time to renew that campaign. And if you're interested in doing that, Pastor Larry Donner will be very happy to work with you. That's another way you could take advantage of this generosity that's going to be taking place between Thanksgiving and the New Year. So thank you to Thrive for making this event possible. The stewardship team heard the anxiety and signaled the need for something like this, and Thrive was ready to help us, and that is the benefit of having the Thrive campaign to support us in our ministry. I also want to lift up Pastor Mike Ward's book, Abundance, and he says that, we have several congregations that have used that as a book study in their congregations, and he's offering a discount for. Pastor Ward, did you say that's through Amazon or through Fortress Press?
Oh, Fortress is the only one that offers a discount.
Yeah, Fortress Press is offering a discount if you want to buy 15 copies or more of the book, a 25% discount for that, so that you could buy a copy for everyone on your council and stewardship team. So keep that in mind too. That's open to all of our congregations in all of our synods. So feel free to take advantage of that. That's everything I have. I really appreciate your time with us, giving us time today. Thank you so much. And Pastor Donner has provided an email for you to contact him in the chat. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, and stay safe, everyone.
Stay safe and healthy. Thanks,
Yes.
Pastor Ward.
Thank you, Pastor Ward.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, all.